And Jacob beheld the countenance of Laban, and behold, it was not toward him as before. It says, I see your father's countenance, Genesis 31:5. Because your countenance can speak volumes of truth about a person without them even saying a word. Especially if it's not toward you as before. And so Jacob says, I have served your father. Now he says, your father deceived me and changed my wages 10 times. Thou hast changed my wages 10 times. For the lips of a strange woman drop as a honeycomb, and her mouth is smoother than oil, but her end is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death. Her steps take hold on hell. Lest thou shouldest ponder the path of life. Her ways are movable, that thou canst not know them. He goes on to say in Scripture 8, remove thy way far from her, and come not nigh the door of her house. So in Proverbs chapter 5 and Scripture 6, this father's wisdom encounter to his son talks to him about a woman that is movable. Her ways are movable. Thou canst not know them. When something is movable, if this lectern or this podium was, really, as soon as I touched it, you've ever been to a restaurant and you sat at a table and throughout the whole dinner, the table is just rocking back and forth because as you move your feet under the table and you hit one of the legs, it starts to move and shake. You want to just take maybe some napkins or something, put it under it because you want it to be stable because nobody likes things to move. Laban is a movable man who, under the sound of my voice, would work for an employer for 20 years and they change your wages 10 times. Proverbs chapter 17, Scripture 19. He loveth transgression that loveth strife. Scripture 14, the beginning of strife is as when one letteth out water. Therefore, leave off contention before it be meddled with. What does it mean to meddle? It means to be drawn into, to become involved in, to literally be interested of oneself being interested in something. So here you see that when there was strife between the herdmen, Abram, what he did not do, he didn't meddle in it. He didn't let it draw him into it. And so by doing that, what he does is he now uses wisdom that he didn't want to be caught up in that strife because that strife would make things movable. Therefore, leave off contention before it be meddled with. Now, I told you, meddle means to be drawn into. To meddle is to become involved in. And to meddle is to interest oneself in. Now, those particular explanations have been cut short from the standpoint of be drawn into and to become involved in and to interest oneself in another's matters where you don't belong. It's been said, stay in your lane. It's none of your business. These are family members. Abram and Lot are family members. Jacob and Esau are family members. You know, in families, there is this getting into each other's, business. It's like if you had, your mom and your dad, or just, she said, why don't you be more like your sister? Your sister, she married a good man. You know what I mean? Look what her husband does for her. You'd be like, well, mom, me and her are different. But you know what? Why don't you be like your brother? Your brother, he got a good education and he got a good job. He go to work every day. Why don't you be like your, so-and-so? And then all of a sudden you may get a sibling a call or a relative calls. Hey, did you hear about cousin? Did you hear about what happened to so? Did you see? And then all of a sudden somebody have an issue and they'd be like, you know what? I'm coming over. And you'd be like, they just impose themselves on you. I'm coming over because you know what? You my family, and family's everything. However, you ain't supposed to meddle. Abram didn't do it. He was wise. Because if Abram would have got caught up meddling in that situation, he would have been drawn into it and no telling what would have occurred. It would affect his wife. It would have messed up Lot's wife. So Abram, you go to the left, I go to the right. You go to the right, I go to the left. That's why the scripture says, the beginning of strife is as one letteth out water, therefore leave off contention before it be meddled with. You get family members, you be like, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my brother's son. Hey, listen, that's their marriage. Leave that alone. That's their kids. Oh, that's not my nephew. That's my niece. That's my auntie. That's my uncle. That's my mom. Oh, you need to leave that alone. That ain't got nothing to do with you. Well, and then you want to play the superhero. You want to put on the Cape Crusader. And you said, I'm going to my so-and-so. I'm flying to my whatchamacallit. I'm going there, be like, so hold up, wait a minute. You getting involved with something that you need to leave alone. Proverbs chapter 24 in the word tonight, 10 times. When someone meddles in things that they ought not to, it causes a movable change. Listen, when Laban got Jacob, Laban said that those was his daughters. Laban said that Jacob's sons was his sons. Now, Laban need to just go back home and leave Jacob alone. Laban is in Jacob's business and his family business. He's a meddler. And therefore, he is now a movable man to the point that Proverbs chapter 24 and scripture 21, the scripture tells us in scripture 21, my son, this is a father's counsel to his son, fear thou the Lord and the king, and meddle not with them that are given to change. 10 times, change. When you have people who are unstable, and you have people that are like Reuben was, unstable as water, thou shalt not excel. So when you meddle and you get drawn in, it makes things unmovable. It makes things movable. It makes things real shaky. And therefore, the scripture tells us in that Proverbs chapter 24, 21, meddle not with them that are given to change. So when you have people who are unstable and you have people that they don't have no consistency in life, they don't have no diligency. I'm talking about living for Jesus. I'm not talking about earthly pursuits per se. Those things also are going to factor in too, because who would invest in you if you was an unstable person and want to become a business partner with you? Unstable people, you listen, you ain't supposed to have nothing to do with them. You know you got somebody, as the scripture says, concerning, meddle not with them that are given the change. See, Jacob had to get away from Laban. He left him. Laban changed 10 times. Because of that 10 times of change, Jacob had to get out of there and leave. When you're dealing with somebody that's changing up, shifting, and they shifty and they switching up, and they open this business this year and then they close it down, and they open up this business this year and they close it down, then all of a sudden they throw a little bit of God in there. You know what I'm saying? That's how people, when they sprinkle a little bit of Lord in there. Lord, you blessed and highly favored. You know, you highly favored. They sprinkle a little bit of season, you know, paprika, you know, a little seasoned salt up there, a little garlic salt. They just dipping it in there, and you can't see they making that soup up. You can't see that soup gonna be poisonous. You should. You ain't supposed to meddle with them folks. You're supposed to leave them alone 100%. Jesus talked about the blind. He said the blind, he said, can the blind lead? The answer is no. He said the blind lead, and you're going to fall into the ditch. And then there was those that Jesus, he told his disciples, he said, you let them alone.